Good morning. I am Pete Najarian. This is The Take for Market Rebellion on this Friday morning and an incredibly volatile market yesterday. When you look at where the Dow was and the NASDAQ, and you look at the lows to highs and the movement throughout the day, absolutely extraordinary. As a matter of fact, we looked over at the Dow and suddenly we had a move of about 500 points to the upside, only to give some of that back late in the day. But an incredibly wide range yesterday. No doubt about that. When we look at volatility, and we talk about volatility all the time, and we say, are these levels right? And what is the volatility telling us? And is it accurate? The answer is yes, 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 yes. Check all the boxes. It has been very volatile. The markets have been moving up and down within the same trading session. It's been incredible. As a matter of fact, yesterday, off of the lows early in the morning, we traveled all the way over 27,000 on the Dow, only to give back a decent share of that towards the end of the day and only finishing up about 50 points on the day. The NASDAQ, similarly, that had a nice, big, broad move and worked basically in lockstep yesterday again with the Dow. And that was something where about a 250 point range and actually finished up on the day about 40 points or so. But the movement is what really stands out. The velocity of the movement is what really stands out. It's been incredible. Silver, gold, crude, they all reversed and actually pushed themselves closer and closer to the green throughout the session yesterday, but not really a whole lot to report on that when we're looking around. We talk about these all the time. Haven't really seen the bounce there. As a matter of fact, speaking of not seeing a bounce, how about the financials? Well, they finally did have a little bit of a bounce. Now, can that be something that actually we get a day to day with that? Goldman Sachs yesterday really leading the charge. On the lows yesterday, about 188. On the highs, it started pushing up and over 196. About a 5% move to the upside, but it was participation across the board. I thought Goldman really did stand out, but Wells Fargo, Bank of America, Citi, Morgan Stanley, JP Morgan, there was participation broadly. I thought of the names, I thought Goldman Sachs really did stand out. I thought it was pretty interesting. And as a matter of fact, when you look over at the NASDAQ, what stood out was the semiconductors yesterday, absolutely, and Tesla. So the standouts certainly are moving around and shifting, and we're seeing different leadership here and there, but semiconductors have by and large been a very, very productive and strong, although, as I mentioned yesterday, about 20 points off of the lows yesterday, so off of the highs rather. So it has adjusted back down, but yesterday a nice powerful move up about 1.8% on that as well. So seeing some very, very interesting movement within these markets. And yesterday, as I say, the velocity of the moves really did stand out. I thought that was probably what stood out the very most. And when we look at the chips, you've got NVIDIA, you've got Lam's Research, you've got Applied Materials, you've got Qualcomm, you've got Texas Instrument. So we're seeing a couple of names that we haven't brought up as much that are starting to participate a little bit more. And I think Texas Instrument really is one of those names that kind of stands out that we don't talk about very often, don't see it as one of the leadership names, but yesterday certainly did step up to the plate. Technology was strong yesterday as well. Apple, Microsoft, you had Tesla if you want to throw that in there, NVIDIA, Salesforce, those names, all powerful. Oh, and by the way, talk about materials all the time. Did you see the move yesterday in Freeport-McMoRan? Because if you did not, that was a pretty tremendous move yesterday out of FCX. It's a name we talk about a lot. We've had unusual option activity in there. It seems like on a constant basis. I've been talking for the last couple of weeks about some of these materials names and some of the option activity that we have seen in there and some of the movement that we've seen that has been very, very fast in terms of how quickly these moves have come. When I say fast, I mean within hours sometimes. So that's fast. We're not talking about days and I'm not talking about weeks. I'm talking about hours at times where we just see these dramatic moves right after we're seeing some of that unusual option activity. Volumes yesterday, under 30 million, but still a really strong number. We had about 28.5 million contracts trading again yesterday. So another monster day for the options world, these record-setting pace that we have been seeing. And as we get closer to October, it's going to be pretty interesting because as we see maybe potentially more volatility because of the uncertainty of the elections and all the rest of it, and obviously we're still waiting on stimulus and so forth, is there going to be even more volume kind of piling in and using that leverage that options give you the opportunity to use? It's why we talk about it all the time, and I talk about growth areas. When you look at companies, and oftentimes we see people on TV, me, one of them as well, talking about, well, I like the fundamental story, I like this, I like the leadership, but you know what I always like to point out? Do they have growth? And where is that growth? And is that in an area that can continue, or has that been pulled forward so much and all the rest of it, all those different details? Well, we've got some serious growth right now in the derivatives world. And when I say that, I'm talking about moving from what was 18 to 20 million per day over the last couple of years to this year's pace closer to 30 million per day. Gives you a little bit of an idea. When I say growth, that's serious growth. So this morning, I'm looking at the markets and we see some pressure on there early. Makes some sense. We were moving all over the place yesterday. There's still going to be some volatility. There's no doubt about that. And the shift of where some of that money is moving, obviously, depending on the different sectors and all the rest of it. So we were down about 120 points indicated on the initial start of the session. As a matter of fact, I'm getting a quick update right now just so we can give it to you live. We are now less than an hour into the trading day here on Friday, down about 90 points. So we've adjusted. It's been moving around. The Dow's definitely been shifting around. So has the NASDAQ. The NASDAQ mostly, for the most part, been in positive territory, up about 25 points in the pre-market. It's been up a little bit more. It's been down a little bit, but right now up about 32 points. So we're going to watch that continue to move, and that's going to be something obviously throughout the day. And we talk about these Fridays, and we talk about Fridays when we were talking about August, we were saying, wow, really tremendous. Well, I got to tell you something. The 5 days a week, we are seeing incredible activity, and Fridays have certainly participated very, very well. Even not just the summertime, but oftentimes you'll see Fridays where that final hour or two, a lot of folks might want to get out and move away from their computers and all the rest of that. We are not seeing that. We are actually have been seeing some acceleration oftentimes in the latter part of the day, even on Friday. So that's something to keep in mind as you're watching and participating in these markets. So the jobless claims remain very high. We talked about yesterday, where are we on the recovery? We've made an incredible recovery, but especially when you consider off the lows. But at the same time, is it a full recovery? No. We all know that there has been a lot of different reasons why we've seen the recovery, a lot of stimulus in a lot of the different areas of the market, as I mentioned earlier, from the hybrid perspective. So keep that in mind. So yesterday we had the unemployment claims, about 870,000. It's under a million, but it's a little higher than expected, but it's in that sort of range, and it seems like the markets are willing to say that's satisfactory. So I'm not saying it was an A. I'm not saying it was an F. Satisfactory. We'll give it a grade of maybe a C, maybe even a B, somewhere in that kind of category. So what's hot, what's not? Energy, not. Down about 1.5% today. Financials, not. Down about 1% today. I talked about, can we get follow through? Now it's early in the session, but can we get follow through on days where the financials finally do see that participation? If we do, fantastic. If not, it's another one of these head fakes, and take a look at where the XLF is now. I talked about it seems to hover around like a magnet near 25. Here we are floating around the 23s at this point in time. So are we at a level where we maybe get another push to the upside, or are we going to continue to just watch this? And a lot of people very negative. I think there are some positives out there as far as the financials are concerned, just in terms of the inexpensiveness side of things. And are they as bad as people are saying? I don't think they're quite as bad, but that doesn't mean they can't go a little bit lower as well. So we'll keep an eye on that, of course. Hot, Boeing, absolutely. Microsoft, when you take a look at the cruise ships, I believe it was Barclays today had an upgrade for the cruise liners. So across the board, those are showing some strength today. Zoom, Tesla, Draftkings, with Penn all this pressure to the downside. Draftkings. Now, I've had some arguments with guys on the network multiple times over the last couple of weeks. Well, I got to tell you something. Draftkings, the reason that they are doing so well, there's multiple reasons, and they've been there. They are the trusted. I think they are the first mover. I think for a lot of those reasons, that's why they are producing better. And I think when you look at Penn certainly has had a great gain to the upside. But if you actually go back in time, DraftKings has absolutely been outperforming Penn this entire run to the upside. We talked about this yesterday with the unusual options that I pointed out. They were buying the puts to the downside, the 48 puts that expire today. Well, were they buying those because they were negative, or were they buying those for protection? That was an insurance policy, was my take. And I think that looks like that's playing out to be exactly what that was. Buying insurance, cheap insurance, in case the stock was going to break down and follow along with Penn. Or could the stock actually move? And it did. And it stayed up for the most part throughout the session in positive territory. And earlier today, when I'm looking at right now, earlier today, it was definitely in positive territory coming out of the gate. So that's something to keep track of as well. Airlines, also one of those, if it's hot or is it not? Airlines, certainly hot. So we've got volatility still hanging around this 28.5 level, almost completely unchanged on the day. So the Dow has rallied back. Just minutes ago, I gave you an update and we were down 70, 80 points, whatever it was. Now, flat. NASDAQ starting to run to the upside, as a matter of fact, up 63 points. So we are seeing one of these flips, and we talk about that intraday movement. Well, we certainly are getting that intraday movement. Now, one of the names that does stand out, and people ask questions all the time, so I'm going to try to answer it best I can. Costco. How is it that Costco is down today? I'm not even sure how much it's down right now, but it was down fairly significantly. And why is that? Well, let's see. They just reported. They reported incredible numbers on the earnings, absolutely destroyed it on the revenues. When you look at their digital sales, up 90+%, and their same store sales, absolutely not in the ballpark of what was expected. So you look at all those numbers, you say, Pete, well, why isn't this stock a little bit higher? Sometimes these stocks make incredible runs to the upside, and there's almost nothing they can do to make it any better at that moment. And that's what I think we are seeing in Costco today. It's made this incredible sprint to the upside. We've talked about Walmart. We've talked about Target. We've talked about a lot of these various names that have had a great run through this pandemic. Absolutely. Costco is definitely one of those names. It's definitely participated in a big, big way as a necessity item for a lot of people. So because of that, stock has been taken off to the upside. The numbers have been extraordinary. They continue to be extraordinary, but it's been great, continues to be great, but you get a little bit of a pullback. It's not even a huge pullback. This is just a pullback off of where it had closed. So I think the potential is still there, but I think oftentimes you do have to take a look at some of these and sort of sit back and say, you know what, at this level, is it growing enough at this level? Will it continue to grow enough at the levels where it is right now based upon the price versus the earnings? And we talk about PE levels for fundamentals all the time. That's something that's going to be a decision made by everybody else. I have stuck with names like Target for a very long period of time because of the fact that even with the run, in my view, I view the PE as not overly extended. I think there are many names out there where we have seen an extension of that. But if the growth is there and it can continue to be there, that's definitely something that stands out. I'll give you a name. Apple. That's my unusual option activity today. I know that sounds, we don't talk about Apple nearly as much when we talk about unusual option activity. We talk about Apple all the time. Katie Huberty, all the time. She's been the gal that I've been leaning on for probably the better part of a decade. And I see a lot of people jumping on board, and that's fine. It's great because they should. She has been the person, in my opinion, who has been the most consistently right. She's not always right, the most consistently right in Apple for all of these years and been pointing out all of the different reasons why. She was ahead of the game talking about services. She's been ahead of the game talking about wearables. And those are the areas that I continue to go off of because of Katie Huberty, Morgan Stanley. She's been absolutely outstanding. So I look at that and I say, well, let's see. They're growing in the right places. Yeah, the phone has not been great growth, but they're growing in the right places when you talk about services, wearables, and by the way, margins. Those are the areas where you're seeing much better margins than you are on the hardware side of things with the phone. So keeping all of that in mind, and Apple's been up and down and up and down, and we know ever since the split, it had that huge run up, just like oftentimes happens. Then this significant pullback towards 100, actually. So today, stock trading 108. What are they buying? 13,000 of the October 2nd expiring. That's 1 week from today. October 2nd expiring, the 113.75s. Now, for those that don't have all the knowledge out there, I'm going to give you a quick hint on something. These are going for a little over $1, right around $1. Now, the interesting thing about this is stock does not have to actually go through the strike that people are buying, because if it moves rapidly enough, oftentimes these options will move along with that at a significant pace. We talk about delta, we talk about theta, we talk about all these various Greeks. But if you understand those Greeks, you understand what I'm talking about. So it doesn't have to actually run up and through 113.75. If it starts to run up, these options will work with it to the upside. You have to understand that. Now, it depends on how volatility shifts around and all the rest of that. And if by any great fortune in the next week, it does sprint up and through that level, well, then all the best. But always have those areas where you say to yourself, you know what? If I'm wrong, I'm going to sell here. If I'm right, I'm going to sell at least some here. That's the rules that we talk about all the time. It's the discipline we talk about all the time. It's what our mentors here at the Market Rebellion are always trying to emphasize to people is you can ruin a great trade if you are sloppy and you aren't disciplined. And that happens to people all the time. So understand that, and it's very, very important. Now, real quick, going into this weekend, I'm a Viking guy. Played for the Vikings long ago. I played for Vikings. I played for Tampa. Now, the Vikings, I got to tell you something. 0-2 start looks awful. A lot of people very, very concerned right now here in Minnesota. Should be. Defenses look bad. The offenses look bad. They have not looked good in any of the games thus far. By the way, we got Tennessee coming into town. Now, here's the problem with that. Tennessee's got a quarterback that's thrown 6 touchdowns and no interceptions so far in Tannehill. He's actually looked like the guy that they paid the big money to keep. And Derrick Henry, the running back, he's over 200 yards already. Vikings haven't been able to do very well against the run. So now you're facing a quarterback who's hot, a running back who's one of the best, if not the best right now in the game in terms of a running back, not necessarily catching, but grinding and pushing and running with the football. Great big man, Derrick Henry, Alabama guy, just an unbelievable football player. Oh, and by the way, there's one other guy, Corey Davis. Keep an eye on him. I had the pleasure of doing games for Western Michigan, PJ Fleck, who was the head coach there, now the head coach of the University of Minnesota. PJ Fleck was coaching this young man for a couple of years up there at Western Michigan. And let me tell you, Corey Davis is a heck of a receiver, so keep an eye on him as well. It's going to be a lot of fun. We got the Vikings. We got a whole NFL slate. I understand that. Everybody's going to be watching their own teams. I've got teams all over, and people say, how can you be a fan of the Kansas City Chiefs? How can you be a fan of the Raiders? Well, Kansas City Chiefs, had a lot of friends who played there, had a lot of coaches who've coached there who I love. They're great friends of mine, been friends forever. Oh, and by the way, they used to have their summer camp, River Falls, Wisconsin, right by my cabin out there. Used to have some of the guys come over to the house. It was a lot of fun. So got a relationship with them, got a relationship with the Raiders, had a lot of friends who've coached over there. I had a brief little stint with them. So all kinds of different reasons why Tampa Bay Buccaneers played there. So got to be a Bucs guy too, right? So you find yourself with all these different things. Ron Rivera, one of the great guys in football. He's been coaching all over the place. Philadelphia, he played. Chicago, he played. Was Carolina Panthers. Now he's at Washington. One of the greatest guys on the planet Earth. He's going through a difficult time, so please send out your prayers for him as well. One of the great guys of all time. My brother Paul's roommate at Cal Berkeley. Been knowing Ron since I was probably in about 10th grade. Something like that. It's been a great relationship, great person. So I got a lot of different allegiance to a lot of different people and a lot of different teams. So you just got to understand that's just the way it is. Folks, have a great day at trading. Have a great weekend, and we'll see you on Monday.